today. Okay, got it. So let's begin, as we've been doing all our sessions, with a moment of unity. You know, as I explained, I think last week, you know, that we come from we all come from different spaces, don't we? You know, and we bring with us a different energy, and often the energy that we bring takes a while to coalesce, to kind of harmonize. And this is kind of the basis or the reason why sometimes our our connections don't start off well. So let's just begin with a few moments of harmonization, and maybe we can use one of the little short affirmations to help us. Last week we were doing a kind of mindfulness exercise to start off, just to relax the mind and to make it more focused. So let's start off with a very short affirmation of spiritual consciousness. Okay, so let us just for a moment step inside into our inner world and to affirm, because we're affirming to ourselves, we're reminding ourselves. This is what affirmations are. This is what meditation is all we're doing is reminding ourselves of who we really are. So let us just go into silence and affirm to ourselves, I am love. My nature is of love. I experience and become that love. I am love. My nature is of love. I experience and become that love. Okay. We don't need to talk about anymore. That's enough, isn't it? It's enough to get, you know, like it's enough to think about and do with that stuff. But I thought last week we were looking at, we looked at the kind of general picture of kind of the journey that we're going through and the kind of types of individuals and situations and circumstances that we meet. And it's like applying, how can we apply spirituality in these situations? I don't need to tell you, it's a difficult situation out there. It's a difficult world. And we looked at the issue of kind of the general picture. And I thought we could look at today how meditation, we could apply it to our relationships and how they affect us, how spirituality can work and how it can help us take another kind of perspective of how relationships work and how we can improve and dealing with the kind of the things. And I want to especially maybe focus on difficult behavior, because we're okay with kind of people that nod and agree and smile and go, yeah, oh gee, fine, it's lovely, isn't it? You know, that's great. But it's the difficult people that kind of rub us up the wrong way, isn't it? And generally, we think about it that mostly most people are very gregarious, open and friendly, aren't they? In general, anyway. And we want to get, well, most of us, we want to get on with each other. And we want to be liked. We want to be accepted. And mostly, isn't it? We enjoy helping and supporting each other. But isn't it, it's quite strange, isn't it, that it seems that around us, there are quite a few kinds of people and behaviors who are difficult to work with, you know, and live with, unfortunately. And they maintain this position. They maintain this kind of attitude, in a way, knowing that the penalty possibly is social ostracization, being shunned, rejected, they gain a kind of reputation, don't they? A poor reputation, you know, of being a kind of like, you know, a difficult person. And when you take that attitude, you lose people's kind of, you lose favor with others, you lose friendship, and so on and so forth. We know the effect of kind of difficult behavior can create. And it's strange, isn't it? Our personality is a repertoire of lots of strategies in dealing with life generally, isn't it? It seems difficult people specialize in getting the worst out of people. This seems to be their main purpose at this particular time, to get the worst out of each other. Yet spirituality teaches us that we all have within us a kind of a positive and cooperative side. We know that. Even the worst of us, underneath that strata of negativity, you know, that people may be showing, the worst kind of guys and that you can kind of meet, and we understand underneath it there is a kind of goodness within everybody. And I think, of course, you know, as through Raj Yoga, we can believe and learn that we can elicit a more positive response from people. I'm not saying that we can change others. I think that's that's up to the individual. I mean, our role is not about changing others, but we can elicit and help each other to move into a more kind of harmonious space. And things can be worked on, because I think through meditation, through spirituality, we can change the nature of the interaction. And this is what other people are not used to. When a difficult person meets another person who may be difficult as well, generally the situation is very fiery or very reactional in that particular way. So the question maybe we should need to ask a little bit, I know it's a very short session, to kind of go into the depth of this, is that what causes this difficult behavior? And we're talking about behaviors at work, aren't we? In our family, with each other, our colleagues, friends that we know. You know, that it's the most difficult thing, isn't it? We're kind of working around with gritted teeth or frustration and so on. So what causes, excuse me, us, isn't it? We're talking about ourselves as well, to be difficult. I think generally it's a kind of, for many people, it's learned. It's an inner program response to certain situations. Certain behaviors are acquired from, say, for example, childhood, actually from observation, you know, that it's either programmed or observed, you know, from parents, family, friends, peer groups, society, media, and so on. And they see this kind of behavior and they think this behavior is acceptable. It's kind of got a stamp of approval because maybe, you know, outwardly, that the person with this kind of behavior maybe is in a position of authority, and maybe is the thought, having that type of behavior has got them to where they are. Or we've seen it from a kind of a younger vantage point, and we think that's the way we should behave. You know, that's that kind of, you know, kind of attitude we should have for others. And so it's quite interesting, isn't it, that when we think about others, it's generally based upon that kind of situation in that particular way. So maybe I should, let me put my slides on, and it might be helpful. I'll whack this on and I hope it comes up. Right, maybe, there we go. There we go. And I don't know where I got that quote from, but I thought that was quite interesting, really, isn't it? That united we stand, divided we can't stand each other, you know. And it's quite interesting when you think about conflict at home or wherever you are at work, occurs when the emphasis is on the difference in people in relationships. And this is kind of one of the things that really happens with it in that particular way. And so to help us to get a kind of handle on things, let me move me on. I think I'm stuck a little bit initially when I do this. Right. Okay. Um, we can kind of, I think it's interesting, first of all, to look at the types of difficult behavior that we can encounter. And this helps us to kind of understand it. I think as spiritual travelers and as spiritual healers and as spiritual observers, I think it's really worthwhile trying to understand, try to understand where people are at. And generally we can recognize there's four main characters that can determine difficult behavior. And there's the first type is wanting to get the task done. This kind of person is like the essential characteristic of this individual is they want it done it quick. It's got to be done. Speed is essential. You might work with people like that, they're usually very aggressive, controlling, and they're kind of know-it-all. You try to kind of interact, but it's kind of like you're steamrollered in that particular way. They're very bossy. And one of the characteristics of this kind of behavior is that other people are at the periphery of that person's kind of world mindset. They just want to get it done. And, you're there just to help it get it done, regardless of the situation. Then there's the second type is the need to get it right. And these type of individuals, maybe you could call them perfectionists. And being a perfectionist, they find faults of every little thing, and of course, when it's not working, when it's not exactly as they see it, they'll start blaming and accusing, criticizing, and they can generally it develops a kind of negative behavior. And they're quite pessimistic. This won't work. There's certainly no way. Just, and so on. That kind of scenario. And the third type of behavior is the need to get along with others. And these are individuals that they're kind of less assertive than some of the other groups. And they're always seeking approval. And they agree to almost anything because they don't want to offend anybody. And they can't say no. And sometimes this is categorized as difficult behavior because they'll agree to you and to the next person, to the next, and so nothing actually ever gets done because of that person's lack of focus. They just want to get along with each other, and they're kind of like, it's like driftwood. They can't really get a hold of things. And the fourth type is the need to be noticed and appreciated, and these individuals are attention seekers. They want acknowledgement. They want gratitude and so on. And they as a result of this kind of behavior, this wanting to impress, is they can be quite sarcastic. They can be quite rude or critical, and probably prone to tantrums and anger to try and, as a result of this kind of behavior. And so most of the behaviors that we kind of encounter are either programmed from early age, programmed through education, or programmed through parental assertion, or it's learnt behavior, observed behavior that they've seen, and so they will follow it in that way. They think this is appropriate. This kind of behavior, one of these types of behavior, is or a mixture of all of them, isn't it? Generally, it's a kind of a mixture, and sometimes it can be spontaneous as well. But whatever comes, and there isn't this kind of ability to kind of see the effect, see the kind of the casualty list that their behavior is kind of causing. And of course the other type of behavior that we're trying to create is a values-based personality that's loving, that's understanding, and cooperative in that particular way. So in a way, I would say that all of us, because I think even these categories, nobody's totally that. except if you've got kind of like psychotic tendencies, you know, that it may be that you're totally one-tracked in that particular way. But that's increasing, unfortunately. You know, the psychopath, the sociopath, who have no awareness of anybody or the effects they're having on others. You know, it's a kind of very cold position. But generally, people are gonna a bit of each, aren't they? And so all of us have some kind of aspect of these kind of behavioral patterns. And so we're all kind of, I would say, potentially kind of, we have difficult behaviors in ourselves that sometimes we're not aware of. We're not aware of the effect we're having on others. We're certainly aware of the effect others are having on ourselves. And so it really depends on the other person, you know, and their take on us. You know, it's either they love us or hate us, you know, in a very cut and dry task. It depends on our stance that we take and their take on whatever we're doing. So each of us, again, each of us have a little bit of each other within that particular area. So let's just move on. I just thought it'd be worth a little bit of a background in that particular situation. So I thought that was an interesting statement. I was just thinking about this today. And I was just thinking, well, no one cooperates with anyone who seems to be against them. So in a sense, what have you tried? It's interesting to kind of ask yourselves in your own particular kind of, your own particular environment and your own particular connections. I think there's two kind of areas that you kind of need to contend with. Dealing with difficult people or difficult behaviors is like, it's a way, it's like your reaction that you're having, you know, for us to reflect on, you know, that are you feeling kind of angry, irritated, you know, some kind of rejection of that other person, you know, and what difficulties you're having, you know, difficulties of cooperating or sharing or trying to make yourself clear. And secondly, the mindset of the other person and their particular attitude. And so maybe it's what we need to do is blend and harmonize and reduce the difference. I think this is the key factor in many of our kind of connections, is we should be trying to reduce these areas that we can kind of deal with it in that particular way. So yeah, meditation is one of the factors that we can help deal with these kind of difficulties, isn't it? We know that meditation is a very powerful tool, isn't it? You know, that we're having to deal with and use in that particular, and say, yeah, isn't that good enough in that way? And so let me see what my next, meditation, look, there we are. Look, God knows, and I can use God's power and my own light. And, you know, that what we're dealing with, you know, as the sister started out at the beginning, you know, that in her introduction, you know, that spiritual self-realization and say God consciousness enables us to link and emerge our unique qualities, our inner virtues, which is of love, which is of cooperation, is the empathy, kindness, and so on. And by emerging that, of course, for ourselves, we begin to see that in others. We begin to have more of an empathic vision and more of an interesting connection with others. As I understand myself as a spiritual traveler, then I begin to see others with the same vision. As my consciousness, so my vision, so my world. Meditation, of course, sharpens our intellect, enable us to be more highly tuned and aware of other people's needs. And we can begin to stand back and feel the pulse of the situation and circumstances. And it gives us the ability to kind of adapt, you know, adapt to the different needs and positions of those who come in front of us, especially if we've got a difficult behavior. And you know, you would probably agree with me, I don't know, but most people are difficult in the sense they're not sure what they want. They're not sure where they are at. They're not sure which direction they're going in. They're not sure about the motives of others. They're not sure. There's a fear, there's uncertainty about what's happening in the wider world, and so on. And it goes on, doesn't it? Everything is creating this kind of turbulence within each other. And meditation is a very powerful tool that pulls us back and helps us, it reconciles that kind of experience and enables us to kind of have that kind of power and that sort of separation from the kind of the chaos that's going around, and give us somehow some ability to kind of interact in a kind of meaningful way and cope with others. Because I think apart from meditation, we do need practical approaches, I think, don't we? We need practical strategies when we meet such situations in that particular way. And so we need to kind of be aware of other people's needs. And so I think I've got a slide on this one, yeah. And so I think initially, when we're kind of dealing with others, we've got to try, I think, minimize the difficult behavior. We've got to try and, the behavior can be kind of huge. And generally what happens is that when we have an interaction, from a lot of people, because of their own difficulties, it goes into the small little kind of flame, enlarges and becomes a conflagration. And so what we're trying to do is just minimize it, and we can say, that's fine. We can soften it, ease it. And it's about not accepting their particular stance. It's not saying, I agree with you, but it's like saying that, well, you know what I stand for, but I do appreciate where you're coming from. It's like acknowledging their pain. It's acknowledging the circumstances, the difficulty they're in. And I think this is really a powerful position when you're dealing with other people, even your own family. It's just acknowledging it, saying, yeah, I understand that. But also it's about not responding in the way that's expected. And it's almost like you could say, it's like saying, oh, thank you for your suggestion or your opinion or your idea or your comment. And I appreciate you stating that. I appreciate you telling me this. And they're sometimes taken aback because they could come with a whole catalogue of kind of complaints and issues and all the rest of it, and moans and groans and all the rest of it. And I think, I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not about trying to change their attitude. I really feel that we're not here to change people, but we can offer suggestions. We can offer ways forward or ways out of kind of the cul-de-sac that sometimes they find themselves onto it. It's about finding a solution, helping them to find their solution themselves, but it's like guiding them in that particular way. It's like saying I know we have an issue here, and what would you like me? You could approach it. Look, like what would you like me to do? Is there anything that you feel that I could do to help you? And so it's holding your position in an easy, in a very flexible way. It's like stating out, well, we have this option and we have that option, and it seems to me that if we take that might happen, and so on. Maybe I could suggest you could approach it in that way, and so on. It's like, again, it's helping the individual with their behavior, with their their complaint, with the issue that they have with them, because possibly behind it there are other issues. Generally there is, isn't it? And it's really about you and difficult person, we call them difficult, but getting on with what you both need to do. It's like helping them to sort of get on and move forward in that way. And so everyone seems to have it's a kind of get something from the position, like a win-win. And it shows that you're willing to fix or change position. And I mean, we could get to the position, where it's about maybe that we are wrong, maybe that if it's a kind of behavior that the complaint is about you yourself, and it's like And it's coming out, having that humility and that courage to say, yeah, it's a mistake, I made it, I'm really sorry. Maybe I should have taken another direction, I should have done something different, I'm really sorry about that. And I think that has a huge effect, doesn't it, on people when you take that kind of position in that particular way. So, but on more of a difficult level, and a more deeper level, I think in a way to help us use spirituality on a more deeper level, I think it's about giving regard and respect, no matter who the situation or the person is. It's about listening. It's listening carefully, very carefully, unemotionally in that way. And it's and I think secondly, it's about accepting that person's position, because for them it's right. You may totally disagree with it. This could be your kids, this could be your colleagues, and you might, oh, this is wrong, but for them it's right. And and they might well be right, and you might be wrong, but it's like, but unemotionally letting the situation unravel, and then maybe to give your opinion if asked, only if asked. But we're so willing, aren't we, to come jump in. So I think also we have to allow others to be themselves. I think this is a really crucial thing, isn't it? And so, isn't it so often, in all relationships, we, or people that we know, we want to change others, and generally it's very interesting that we want them to change to suit ourselves. And this is their role, this way. One of the great laws of spirituality is that everyone's playing their own unique part. Everyone's trying to find themselves. I know it's a cliche, but it's like, and they're trying to kind of formulate their role. And so in a way, don't get entangled. It's like you have to kind of step aside, in that way. They're, in a way, all of us, and you think about your own journey, everyone trying to sort their own part out or sort themselves out. And in the kind of, because of the influences around us today, many kind of attitudes have been implanted on people. And so it's like they're trying to get through that kind of mist. We talked about last week, wasn't it? I think, about the mists, the storms that come up, and it's trying to see through it. And I don't think it's that helpful unless, again, somebody asks you. And and the third one about awareness of boundaries. I think everyone needs space. They're trying to go into outer space, but people want to have space here. Everyone has boundaries. And I think it's very important to know where I end and you begin. And I think conflict occurs when there is a constant invasion of boundaries. When you think about, kids, you think about teenagers, you think about husband-wife relationships, we become very bossy, very directive in that way. And this is the way bust-ups can happen. Violence, of course, is a kind of the next step on. And this is a kind of the social civil war is kind of like teetering under the surface like that, when we kind of invade other people's space. It's like wars happen when you cross the boundary of another country. And so we cross the boundary of other people's lives, and people resent it. You would resent it if somebody came around and tried to tell you and take over your life and tell you what you need and do. Then no one, it's a kind of spirit, it's a kind of social spiritual ego, isn't it? That we feel we know better than the other person. And this is why kind of there's such resentment, among young people. Often they may know much better, or they know intuitively what they want, but they can't articulate it. And the parents kind of say, you should be doing this, the big finger, isn't it, in that particular way. I think have no expectations or dependency. I think we've got to treat each other as a unique individual. I think all of us, spirituality teaches, we're all separate. but we're together. And I think a very important point is that the other person is not there for me. They're not there for me. When you think about your family or your friends or your colleagues, you know, we're all traveling on the great kind of river of life. We're all playing our parts, and that person is not there for us. This is kind of like the ego of, you know, self-obsession, is that you think everyone's there to serve you. And you want them to tell you, help you, guide you, give everything to you, you know, bow down to you and all the rest of it. Not at all. So it's like, be yourself. It's like, we have to be ourselves. And I think this is a really nice point, isn't it? In the sense of, don't be a people pleaser. You know, are you a people pleaser? Yeah, yeah. Just because you're looking at them and thinking, is that the right thing to say? Even though you disagree with it. Because you want, because of maybe low self-esteem that we probably have in some degree, or we want to be included. You know, speak your mind when necessary. But hold your position. Make it clear where you stand. I think this is really important. And don't try to be a nice person. This is the paradox of spirituality, isn't it? We are nice. I'm nice. I'm very nice. But don't try to be a nice person in certain circumstances. You know, okay, being yourself and holding a position, it can create issues, and it takes courage. Sometimes it's a bit of a risk, isn't it? But I think in the long run, you know, maybe with people who disapprove of us, you maybe even people, you know, dislike you. But I think ultimately you will find self-respect and people will respect you. You lose all that when you try to be somebody else, when you're this kind of people pleaser. Yes, yeah, nodding donkey. You know, and what do they do with donkeys? They just ride them, manipulate and use them. But you've got to be a kind of stallion. You've got to be this beautiful horse of perfection in that particular way. So you've got to stand on your own truth. I think we've got to hold our truth. This is one of the great laws of spirituality, you know, that we're finding our truth. And you've got to be authentic. I think this is what people really like, isn't it? Be authentic, be real. You know, don't rely on wanting approval or validation for whatever you want and see, and want gratitude. You remember we talked about the categories, you know, the categories of difficult. These are all kind of difficult for ourselves in that particular way, you know, in that particular. And so again, let's move on. Let's have clear communication. We've got to be clear in what we're saying and doing in that way, just looking at the lines there, you know. And then you won't, you know, like when you're self, you kind of, you're not giving any mixed messages to others. Be honest, be sincere, be truthful, clear in what you would like to happen, you know, in that way. You know, that's a key thing. This is what you'd like to have, not this kind of position, this is what should happen, but what would you like to? I think this could be nice to happen if this happened, wouldn't it? What do you think? It's a softer, it's less aggressive stance in that particular way. But I think we have to accept compromise, because that's the name of the game. Compromise. We dance, we sing, we jump around together, and sometimes the situation or the circumstances is not to our particular liking, but you kind of go with it. It's compromise. Okay, you know. And generally, I feel from my experiences, what you like and what you want and what you need, if it's based on truth, will kind of occur anyway, will happen. You know, it's just having that kind of faith in your own kind of drama, faith in your own kind of position in that particular way, and faith in, you know, that on truth will have its kind of, you know, revelation to yourself and to others in that way. I think in a way it's quite interesting. We're talking about how people react effect, you know, that how are we doing for time? Just going to check the time there. Yeah, not too bad. There's quite interesting. There's a little story. I just remembered it now. You know that I'm thinking about reaction, and there's a you might have heard, it's a well-known story. A guy was on the train, and his kids were running amok on the train, and all this, and some woman was complaining and saying, "No, these, you know, trying to read her book or something, you know, called Peaceful Women, I think." And she said to the guy, like, she said to the dad, you know, can't you look after your kids? Can't you keep them quiet? Can't you just, like, you know, like, I'm trying to read my book on this train. You've got out of control, blah blah blah. And the dad looked to the woman and said, "Oh, I'll try to, but unfortunately, we've just come from their mother's funeral. Their mother died the other week, and now they're just partly experiencing that kind of effect." And so, you know, immediately that kind of like put the woman in place, you know. So sometimes we react, we jump in with lots of kind of assumption, not really having the full picture in mind, you know, and we create, you know, assumptions in imaginative scenarios. And what happens is we create the proverbial from the molehill to the mountain, isn't it? And then it kind of escalates, you know, into kind of blaming and accusations, complaining, finger pointing, and all that kind of stuff, sulking and all that. So I think a lot of emotional turmoil can be avoided by just stepping back. You know, that this is in our behaviors and in our interactions. You know, and meditation is a fantastic kind of help for this. That as in meditation, what we're doing is we're stepping back from things. We're going into our inner world. We're going into that kind of silence of reflectivity, that silence of kind of being the observer and just appreciating and letting things happen around us. This is our inner space. And we can assess the situation. It happens very quickly, you know. It's not kind of sitting back saying, "I'm just going to the mountains for a week or two and just thinking about whether I should put a mat outside my house or not." No, it's nothing. It's about just having that kind of awareness. It's just helping us to weigh out and try to see the full picture, and it also gives you time to cool down when we kind of have a situation, you know. And it also helps us to kind of engineer, that's a kind of, maybe it's a wrong word, but kind of help us to kind of guide our relationship in the right way. And maybe that when you're having a situation, you can ask for more time, you know, to reconsider, think things over. You know, it's like saying, I think this is a very interesting situation that you're bringing in front of me now. Maybe would you mind if I have a couple of days to kind of think on this? Immediately, what could have been a fractious, could have been emotional turmoil, could have been a bust up, could have been a big blazing argument, is immediately okay, and enables the other person also, who's kind of bubbling away, right, you know, with their machine gun there ready to shoot you down, and so on. And so it helps us kind of deal with that situation. And we can control the situation and our emotions. And so also it's kind of helping us to become aware of our own feelings, you know, and gives us a chance to see where others are at. We can actually begin to see where the other person is at, rather than what my egotistical, emotional, immediate reaction is kind of saying, you know, "Oh, they're just greedy, blah, blah, blah." And maybe they were, but maybe they've moved on, or that maybe give me a chance to see something more positive. You know, it might help me to see what they're going through in that particular way, and what influences they're trying to deal with. You know, it's always good to remember that as much as you're going through a lot of stuff, other people are going through very similar stuff, and they're trying to process it. And of course, it's going to come out wrong. It's going to come out in different ways. And it's like having that kind of perspective and that kind of empathy and that awareness with people's behavior in that particular way. So also, don't forget to use magic words. Do you know the magic words? I hope you've all learned magic words. Are they teaching in Dallas the magic words? Because we should be doing magic. Do you know what the magic words are? I bet you don't know. Shall I tell you? I'm sorry. I appreciated what you said. I liked your idea. What do you think? There's a magic word, isn't it? Big one. That all children, as children of God, thank you. When children don't say, they say, you say, what do you should say? Thank you. Thank you. Or we've been mentioned earlier, I understand your position. And you know yourself, this has a massive effect on people. A massive effect. As a positive comment. You know, it's standing with them. It's appreciating them in that particular way. So this is really important. You know, these are magic words. Sometimes that's all we need to say is hello. How about that one as a magic word? How are you? Often we don't say that to people, you know, don't say anything. You go to a shop, you go to the supermarket, and you talk to the lady behind the till there and you say, how are you? How are you? That's a lovely, I like that gold earring you got there. Did you steal? I mean, not did you? And it's saying it's a lovely day, isn't it? Hope you have a lovely day and so on. But from your heart in that particular way. So, and okay, I can understand, you know, like you might say, okay, it's all right, Jim, you can say all this stuff. But when things, say, have gone down the track a bit, things have got out of hand, you know, that, and people become very irrational and the situation or circumstances become exaggerated or distorted. And words make things worse, don't they? They can do. And this is where meditation greatly can work. Comes into play, isn't it? And meditation is really working with vibrations. It's working with the atmosphere. You know, it's working with your spiritual heart. And as we work on this particular inner level, it transcends the physical mind, the physical emotions. And of course, it brings coolness, calmness, and triggering a different response in that particular way. And things can kind of work in a very powerful way. And I think possibly we should be always working from this position, you know, from that inner level. And this is working before any interaction, before any connection. If you know that it's going to happen, you know, that is maybe just to send a few thoughts out, send a few vibrational energies, and prepare the circumstances, prepare the arena that you're moving into. So when you go there, you've created the scenario that you would expect. It's peaceful, it's calm, it's cooperative. Everything is fine because you've created that scenario. That person has moved in and they suddenly feel calmer and they feel good. Their mind, which has been maybe a bit tight, has calmed down because they're very receptive. Not all the time, but it can work very powerfully. It's a very good practice. Before you're going anywhere, is set the scene, set the scenario. But it's also good for yourself because you are creating a mindset that's positive, that's powerful, and that's going to work for the positive in that particular way. So, okay, I'll stop there. Let me just check the time. Yeah. I think that would quite be a good time to stop and maybe ask you if there's any questions or you'd like to add some of your own, any other things that have worked for you and other situations that might all of us could find useful.
So we had a question from the audience or one person. The question is, you can see others' defects and weaknesses easily. but we cannot recognize our own weaknesses too clearly because of our ego. What is the best way to realize your own shortcomings in order to improve our spiritual life?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? I think in a way it's an ongoing process. You know, that the whole process of spiritual realization or understanding is to kind of clear out all the crap that's within ourselves, all our shortcomings. And it's quite interesting. It's, you know, the old analogy of the onion, you know, that you peel one layer and there's another one to and there's another one, there's another one. It becomes more subtler. And so all the defects that we have so many subtle aspects to them, you know, that have, you know, there's all subtle, like anger. Anger has got so many different aspects to it, so many different, you know, situations. And so it's like the more we become introspective, the more we use meditation, the more we sit in meditation, it's like a mirror. It reflects back on ourselves. That when I sit in meditation, I kind of become aware of, you know, what's real and what's true and what's artificial. And you don't, and after a while, you don't like wearing things that, doing things that are unreal and untruthful. It's like a dirty old, you know, dirty clothes. You don't want to wear them anymore. I don't want to wear that. Ugh, it's dirty. And so I don't want to adopt that. And so you begin to become self-critical. And secondly, I think meditation is also, it's like you have a cup that's full up with, say, say a bowl of dirty water, and the more I pour in the clean water, what's happening is displacing it. I'm pouring it in, and it's displacing. And so this is another way that meditation is working. It's filling us up, but at the same time cleaning out. And gradually the water becomes clear. And another aspect, isn't it, sometimes, that the turbulence that we have is surface level. And all we've got to do is become quiet, go into silence, and that turbulence settles down. It may just be superficial, created by some aspect of our old personality. And that helps us to kind of realize that in that particular way. I hope that answers your question.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment for Jim?
It makes sense that any of this stuff, in a way, you find useful, because often we think spirituality is just sitting there in meditation, but it's actually using it, but using it in a practical, real way, using our qualities, using our spiritual virtues, our powers, in translating it, how others can feel it in that particular way, isn't it? Then it becomes true spirituality. Otherwise it's a kind of theoretical, it's philosophical spirituality, just locked away. But it's when we're out there in the jungle, you know, it's a tool, but we have to translate it in that way.